Well, Dimitri de Boer is the Director for China at ClientEarth and the Special Advisor to the China Council for International Cooperation on Environment and Development. Dimitri, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, give us a sense, if you will, of how significant this agreement is. What should the public take away from it, do you think?
So this agreement is significant in the sense that it shows that climate action continues. It doesn't stop, despite what some leaders would want to make us believe. And it means that EU and China can rise above global tensions to deal with the bigger issues. And climate change is a really big issue.
There's been a commitment, hasn't there, from both sides to update these climate targets for 2035. This is in preparation for COP30. How important do you think that step is? And what kind of ambition would you like to see reflected in those targets?
So it's very important to do this. And the targets must be aligned with the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement. And that is something that was reflected in this joint statement. And it's very important because the temperature goals of the Paris Agreement are quite ambitious. And so that means that both sides will need to quickly reduce emissions to actually be able to achieve that. China has committed to peaking before 2030, but now the target will be set for 2035. So by how much should the emissions be reduced by 2035 in China? And the more the emissions are reduced, that means less reductions have to be done later, and it also means that there will be less climate impacts in the meantime. That's a very important goal.
And looking at the statement, it highlights many areas where the two sides, China and the EU, can cooperate together, areas like methane, carbon markets, and all sorts of green technologies. Where do you see the most practical room for progress between the two?
So I very much liked the focus on sharing these green technologies and making sure that they become available everywhere. China has moved so fast in the last few years on solar, wind, batteries, and electric vehicles. And these technologies must become widely available around the world to make the climate transition work. And so in the past, sometimes the EU has spoken about overcapacity in China. In our view, in these green technologies, there is no overcapacity because the world needs these technologies so badly and has committed to triple, for example, renewable energy deployment by 2030.
Now, it's not all going to be plain sailing, is it? In your view, what do you think are the biggest challenges in this relationship between China and the EU? And how do you think they can turn those challenges round?
Well, there's challenges inevitably in the relationship, but also the climate transition is a challenging transition. It means reconfiguring the entire economy. But I think what China has been showing in the last few years is that there are real business opportunities in the climate transition. Clean energy technologies contributed 10% of China's GDP growth in 2024, and that's more than real estate sales. So climate action can really help to boost the economy, and that's a new thing in the world. And also China's exports of and overseas investments in green technologies last year led to reduction in global carbon emissions of about 1.5% of the total. And that's only expected to increase in the coming years.
Dimitri de Boer, thank you very much indeed for joining us.